Okay, so our next stage is to actually use a saw. We're going to make sure we cut, and we've got to cut, when we come to do our last cut, this one here, it's got to be perfect. We've got to be professionals at this stage, we've got to be really good. We've got to cut exactly on that line, not wonky, not like that or like that. But also, and more difficult, is to make sure we cut exactly down the wood in a perpendicular fashion, not over in that direction, for example, or over in that direction. Okay, so we've got to practice this as we go. So we're going to have a couple of practice goes on our own finished piece of wood. We are going to use this to make our picture frame. So we're going to practice in an area that's safer. To do this, we're going to put a little marking in the middle, just roughly. Use your eye. That is about in the middle. About is fine. Halfway between this point here and this point here is about there. Halfway between here and here is about there. Okay, so we're going to have 1, 2, 3 practice cuts. And the same way, we need to make sure that we're practicing cutting on a perfectly marked out line. So we do need to use our tri-square again. When I do this, I'm pushing with my thumb, so I'm dragging this so there's no gap there. On that line, like so, on that line, like so. And we're going to practice going perfectly down here. You must do this. It's absolutely vital that you also go 1, 2, 3 down here. And on the other side, we're going to use our tri-square to mark those perpendicular lines down there, and down there. So we have a set of markings. This is going to be our first practice. This is our second practice. This is our third practice. Okay, we do not cut this one until I say to cut this one. Okay, so we don't cut that one. What we do is we're going to use a saw. I know you know that. So, but it's more sophisticated than that. We're going to be using these types of saws here, but there are many other types. For example, this saw is much longer, but it's very wobbly. And it's called a rip saw. It rips through the wood very quickly. It's really designed to cut along the grain of wood, and it kind of wedges it out as much as it cuts and kind of splits the wood. But it might split with the grain. And as it wobbles, you can see this one wobbling. As it wobbles, it might not be as accurate. So that's not what we're going to use. We could use this saw here. This is called a coping saw. There's kind of a clue, if you like, in the C shape of the frame. A little thin blade there. This one is for doing curvy lines in wood. It's not very good at doing straight lines particularly. So we're not going to use that. We need straight lines. This wood, if anybody knows, is actually called a hacksaw. What it is for cutting metals and plastics. Okay, and it hacks, making a hacking noise, kind of squeaky, scratchy noise. It hacks through metals and plastics. We don't use that. We're working wood. And this guy is a junior hacksaw. There's many other types of machine tools. There's circular saw, table saws. This is not a machine as such, but this is called a mitre saw for cutting mitre joints like you see around door frames. And it's very accurate at cutting angles. We're not cutting angles, so we don't need the mitre saw. Okay, so safety. Obviously, this is a very sharp end to the saw here. If you walk around talking in this way, this might go in somebody's face. It could be very dangerous. If you run with this tool, obviously it's very dangerous. If you don't clamp your work and you try and just hold it, for example, and move, the saw's going to go around, you might cut your fingers. Okay, so to be safe, you always put the saw in the middle of the table so it doesn't fall off. When you come to use the table or back on the tool bench, when you come to use it, make sure you're sensible and make sure your work is clamped effectively. The clamp we use is basically this. We're going to make our own clamp with our hands, but this helps us, this device. This hooks over benches So what would you call this? A bench hook. You're quite right. We're going to put this into the wood vise. If you are right-handed, you will notice there's a little lump here with the right-hand portion is missing. So if you're right-handed, you put it into the vise like so, and you can see that many more people are right-handed because people end up cutting them there. If you're left-handed, just turn it over and put it into the vise like so, and your lefties would do it in this way. Okay, so take the bench hook into the vise and righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, we're going to tighten that into there so it doesn't move. You're then going to take the saw and your workpiece. So the correct grip, now you have your bench hook in place and your workpiece, is to put your fingers over the top like so, and your thumb is going to be tightly against here, not like this. Okay, not like this. So some people do, they try and put their pad of their hand on it. Those people won't have a very good grip and it will start to get very red and sore on the bottom of your hand. So we want it to be very tight. You're also not going to work out here. I cannot stop that moving with my thumb, even though it's going white with the effort, I can't do it. So whenever you're going to cut, if I'm going to cut on this line first, I have it right at this point like so. And then I grip it with my fingers over the top of the bench hook and my flat thumb down there, fairly close to it, about a centimetre away is fine. Okay, now if I try and move it, I'm actually moving the whole of the table, and that is not moving relative to that. You're going to cut on this line first of all, perfectly. Do it perfect, you take the saw, and this is incorrect. This is correct. You're going to put your finger down the saw. That really helps us to guide it and get it perpendicular. It's how the professionals do it. I want to see those fingers. To start the cut, what we're not going to do is just go, I'm going to start on that line there, for example. If you try and cut horizontally, first of all, you'll kind of slide around the place. And I'll probably see some people here who have kind of slid around and they've scratched the surface of the wood. You'd need to sand that out later, so that's not ideal. To start, what we do is we put the saw at an angle, okay, and you're going to line it up. You can actually put your finger on the work. So if I'm here, you can put your finger on there, and that helps us get started. Okay, so I'm using my finger on the blunt part of the saw. So what we do is we put our finger, which you can't see now, you put the saw on that line. And when you're there, you just drag towards yourself. Once, twice, 3 times. 3 is the magic number. And what that has done is it's created a little nook in the wood. That nook holds our saw. Okay, so that saw is now kind of trapped in that nook, and that's going to help us be accurate. When you've got the nook, you can then start still dragging towards yourself for now. Slightly longer strokes. When you've got a few of those, you can push forwards very, very gently. Okay, do not force it at this stage. Very gently and still at an angle. And when you get more confidence and when it's not kind of gripping and it's not digging in, if it ever digs in, just drag it and it won't, or push forward lightly and it won't. Okay. From this stage, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the... You come around? What you do at this stage is you're looking at this line and you're looking at these teeth at the back of the saw. And what I'm trying to do is like a pilot landing a plane. I'm trying to make it touch down on that runway. Okay, so we keep at an angle, but I'm always watching that back teeth. I'm slowly going more and more horizontal, and then I touch down at that point like that. So we start off here at an angle, and we're slowly, patiently becoming more horizontal, landing on that line. Once you're there, fingers out, don't forget, you can now start using more of the saw. The middle part of the saw is always the bluntest, because lots of people just go up and down in the middle like that. And it's really hard work, you get all sweaty, and you kind of come off the line, and you get tired, and it's not the best way, it's slower. What you want to do is use the tip of the saw and push right through to the end of the saw. Check that you're doing this. Okay, whatever saw you're using, you always use the whole of it as much as the blade as possible. Let the tool do the work, what the old people say. Okay, so now we are cutting using the whole of the saw, and we're going to watch that line here. Okay, and we're going to make sure we don't go below it. This is our waste wood, this is our good wood. So as I'm cutting, I'm making sure that I'm straight. If I'm not going straight down, I can twist the saw like so. So use your wrist to twist. And I'm going to stop when I hit that line. So you can see there I've stopped just above the line. However, horror of horrors, I've gone below the line on this side. So what I was doing is I was actually holding the saw like this. So that's why we have markings on this side and we have markings on this side. It's very important that you look on down here and check where you are, and you look over there like that and you check where you are. If you find you're going too far up or down, there's nothing to say that you can't finish off a few strokes just with a saw at that angle. Okay. This stage, look at my posture. I have my left foot forwards, and I have a nice stable base with my right foot. Think about basketball, for example, and using the whole of the saw. At this stage, I'm checking. See, I'm down the line here, and I'm checking them over here. I'm not quite on the line here, but I am on the line down here. So I'm just going to turn the saw like this. A few little strokes. And that is now perfectly down to the line, slightly above the line on both sides, and we stop. Third practice, our final cut is here.